Folks, it's Rob Blux here from Property Developer Network, coming to you for yet another Sunday session. This week's Sunday session is on how to farm your property patch. Now, this is quite an important part of your journey. This is assuming that we've gotten to a point where we actually have narrowed down both our strategy and also the area in which we want to farm. And now we've narrowed that area down. Then it's how do we actually go and create opportunities within that area to fill up our deal funnel. Okay, now before getting there, one of the preeminent steps that you need to get to is the ability to actually work out what your development strategy is and also where you're going to work. So your development strategy is probably the number one step in the entire process. For those of you who've been watching me for some time, you'll know that I have a very clear and succinct model, and that is that we want to get you really narrow and really deep in your knowledge. So don't get distracted by too many things. We want you to pick one development strategy. We want you to pick one council in which to do that. And then we want you to then narrow that down to 3 suburbs to which you become an area expert. Now, in our property development formula program, we go through the methodology that determines how you actually do that, how you choose your strategy, how you build a 5-year roadmap for your financial freedom, and then how you then get to work out where you're going to farm, because every development strategy works, but it doesn't work everywhere. So this particular talk today is assuming that we've done those prerequisite tasks and then working out, now that we've gotten to the point where we've got now that we've got the area in mind, how do we then start to farm that and build the opportunities that are going to fill up that funnel? Now, in the very early days, as you start jamming opportunities into the funnel, you're going to have to go through a process where you're going to start to learn, how do I determine, is it actually developable? We're going to also then work out from there, is it profitable? And 90% of all developable sites are not profitable. And then from there, we then get to the point where we start to negotiate. And once we can negotiate, hopefully we can actually get terms that actually fit our criteria. So that's kind of the process. But assuming that we've got there, what are the 11 different ways? Okay, so some of these are really obvious, but I'm going to go through the process anyway to try and call them out, because quite often we forget, we get overwhelmed and we think that there's only 1 or 2 different ways in actually getting this. So I'm going to go through some opportunities here and some tips and tricks in order to maximize the outcome of those. So the most obvious one that most people think about and are actually really afraid to do is letterbox drops. Now, a letterbox drop has a couple of advantages to it. Firstly, you are proactively approaching the vendor. The vendor at this point in time may not necessarily be interested in selling day one. And so what we're doing is waking up their idle curiosity. Now, if we have a look at how many opportunities there might be in an area, typically properties turn over once every 10 years. And so if you send 100 letters out, then chances are 10 of those properties might be interested in selling that particular year. So what we're trying to do is wake up that idle curiosity for those people who might be thinking about it and get them interested in communicating to us before they go and talk to an agent. So that's really the approach. And depending on how we phrase those letters, what we've actually got in the content of those, we may or may not get a result from that. Now, 10% might be interested. Out of those, about 50% may actually return our call. So when you do the numbers, about a 5% hit rate. So when you send 100 letters out, about 5% return is about what you're going to anticipate if you've got a good campaign, which means you need to send a lot of letters out to work out whether or not you're going to get success in that department. So don't be sending 2 or 3 letters and then give up. Now, when you do this, there are 2 very distinctly different approaches. So one is you can do the shotgun approach, and that is send letters to the entire suburb, absolutely everyone, without doing any pre-qualification of those sites. And the other one is more like a sniper, and that is that we're going to pre-qualify the sites and only send letters to properties that we're actually interested in. Now, both approaches work. However, what I would say is that if you do the shotgun approach, it's going to be much more expensive to send letters out because you're sending them to many more people. But you you effectively are deferring the workload until the phone actually rings. And when it rings, you then have to do your homework on that property at that point in time. So you don't know if the property actually is qualified when they call you back. And it might be that it's a dud site because you didn't put any effort in up front. The alternate approach is to actually put your effort in up front. Now, I teach a methodology called the rapid elimination method, and that is that stage one of that is a 10-minute check. So we're going to put a 10-minute check into all of our properties and only send letters to the ones that actually pass that 10-minute check process. That way we know if a phone actually rings, then we know that it's actually a hot lead. Knowing also that we have pre-qualified the suburb, we know that the likelihood of success in that area, if we can buy it at market, is very, very high. And so by doing the front loading of the effort before we actually send the letters out, one, we don't send as many letters. Two, when the phone actually calls, we know that we're going to actually pay attention to that because it's somebody that we're really interested in. And lastly, we know that if we can get it at market price or near market price, then there's a good chance of profitability because we've already pre-qualified that suburb up front. Now, the thing with letters is that it doesn't really matter so much what the letter actually says if people don't even open the letter. So one of the things that you need to do is try and get the letter to the point where it is attractive enough to open. How many of us have received a plain white envelope with a clear plastic window on it, and it looks like a bill, and it's pretty obvious where it says, dear homeowner? It's one of those things where we just know that this is not interesting and people don't want to open them up. So you want to make it attractive for them to open. Now, there are many, many ways to do that, but you could change the shape of the envelope. For example, you might change the color of the envelope. You might make it look like a birthday card or a greeting card. You might put something inside the envelope so that it's lumpy, okay? So that there's a point of difference that actually creates an idle curiosity to actually open the letter. Once they open the letter, now you've got more of a chance for people to have actually read it. They'll never read it if they can never open it. So really good tip and trick is to make the letter itself, the envelope, very attractive so that people actually do open it. So that's letters, okay? Now that's going to attract people who may not necessarily want to deal with an agent. And depending upon what you put inside the wording of that letter, it might say, by dealing directly with me, you avoid agents' commissions, which means more money in your pocket. Now, some people that's going to be very attractive. Other people don't feel comfortable dealing directly and they will want to go through an agent. So way number two is to then deal with agents, okay? Now, agents firstly, agents get listings for properties, but quite often we forget that agents are equally able to source properties for us, okay? So there are buying agents and there are selling agents. And an agent can work in either role. It just depends on who's actually paying the commission check. So if you go to a real estate agent in your local area that you think is someone that you want to build a long-term relationship with, and you have pre-qualified your sites, you can get that agent to actually go door knocking for you, knowing that it's a property that is of high interest to you. So you might give 10 agents 5 properties each. Each one of them will go out and actually go door knocking. Now, the beauty about this approach is that agent is now working on your behalf, which means that when they sign the deal up, it's actually then negotiating on your behalf, which means that they're interested in getting the lowest price humanly possible, not the highest price when they're representing the vendor. So if you're engaging the agent, make sure that you tell them that you're willing to pay their commission and that they are going to be working on your behalf. And you should be able to negotiate a fairly good commission because the workload that they're going to be doing is much, much lower than they would be if they were doing a traditional sales campaign where they have to get all the marketing ready, they have to do home opens, they have to process lots of different people going through the properties and follow-up phone calls and that sort of thing. In this instance, you've given them a list of 5 properties that you're very interested in. And if they can get that at or near market price, then they know that you're going to transact. So that's very attractive from that perspective. The other thing with agents is you want to make sure that you're building a long-term relationship with them knowing that you're going to be trading many, many properties over many, many years. Not only are you buying properties, but you're also going to be selling properties. So, if you're going to create 6 townhouses, for example, then there's the original purchase, and then there's potentially 6 sales that might interest that agent. So if you're working and building a good long-term relationship with an agent, they're going to be interested in the long-term game. Now, in saying that, not every agent is very good at their job, and some of those agents may not necessarily get the results that you're after. So if you get an agent who goes out and does some door knocking and doesn't actually get any interest, then just give those same 5 properties to the next agent. Make sure that many people are actually going by and having a look at the property. Now, the next one, so that's number 2. So we've got letters and we've got agents, okay? And agents are also going to be giving you properties as they come to market as well. So you want to build relationships with those agents for many, many reasons, but there's no reason why they can't work on your behalf. So way number 3 is door knocking. So you actually go out and door knock the property yourself, okay? So when you're going to be doing that, that can be quite confrontational. I guess from a personal perspective, when you go there, you're going to feel nervous and what do I say and all those sorts of things. But that's something that comes with practice. When you start to have conversations with people, it's about trying to do that in a non-threatening way and just say, look, I'm looking for properties in the area very similar to yours. If you're interested in selling, that's fantastic. But if you're not interested, do you know someone in the area that might be? So you want to make sure that they are not feeling confrontational in that department. Now, right now, whilst we're in COVID times, the door knocking side of things, particularly in some parts of the country, may not be something that's allowed at this point in time. So I'm very conscious of that, but it is certainly one that is certainly worthwhile. Now, the power is that each one of those 3 that I've just listed, by themselves, they are quite effective. But when you combine all 3 together to the same property, then all of a sudden you're having multiple attack vectors on the same property, and your chance of getting success in that is much, much higher. So if you think about it logically, a property owner who's thinking about selling their property, some of them will only want to deal with an agent. So when an agent knocks on their door, fantastic. Some people will only not want to deal with agents. So when they get a letter in the door, that's fantastic for them. Now, in both instances, you've had both of those come across. And the door knocking is just, I guess, closing the loop because sometimes they don't even read the letter. So what we're trying to do is cover all of those little attack vectors and make sure that we've got the highest chance of probability of actually getting our message to the vendor in the first place. Now, what I want you to remember, as I said, 5% hit rate is fairly common on the letter type responses. When you combine those other approaches, you might get 8 to 10% of people that are interested in at least having a chat. That doesn't mean you're actually going to get a deal, but that's, I guess, having a conversation with someone, which is at least partway through the process. Now, what you've got to remember is that sometimes all we're doing is triggering an idle curiosity, and some people just want to know, hey, what's my property worth? And sometimes we're actually getting people interested who might be thinking about selling in year 2 or year 3. So they're not ready just yet, but certainly the fact that you've approached them gets their curiosity happening. Now, these are the hidden opportunities a lot of us, I guess, don't take advantage of. And that is, well, if I'm not looking to sell it for 2 or 3 years, that's a lot of time that might be to your advantage. Maybe there's an opportunity where you can say, well, given that you're not in a hurry and that I need to go get development approvals, why don't we use that time to our advantage? I won't have holding costs. You'll be able to live there. But why don't we set a point in the future where that might be attractive to you to actually sell, and you give me notice, and we actually go into an arrangement, say 12 months in advance of you wanting to settle, and I can give you an uplift in your price point because I'm avoiding a whole bunch of holding costs in the way. So along the way, I should say. So make sure you, when you get a no, you got to work out, is it a hard no or a soft no or a just no, not yet? And if you can navigate that, you might be able to open up a future opportunity that might not be sitting there otherwise. So that's 3 ways so far. The 4th way is online listings. Now, most of us are familiar with the big property portals. So we've got realestate.com, we've got Domain, and a number of the other larger ones, but they're the 2 big players that are actually sitting out there. Now, when they go onto those portals, you can safely say that the majority of your listings are going to make it there if the agent has been able to convince the vendor to go through an advertising and marketing campaign. The challenge is that sometimes the vendor either A, doesn't have money, or B, is a little bit price sensitive with regards to the marketing campaign. And sometimes they don't want to spend the money on the large advertising and marketing costs. And so it doesn't make it to the big portals. And so this is where there is some hidden opportunity that many, many people overlook. And that is that each individual branch or agency has its own agency portal. So your local real estate agent in your local area will have a website for themselves. And if the vendor has been a little bit cost conscious, they may not want to pay the advertising. So it'll go onto the agent's portal, but it won't go onto the big portals. Now, if you see that, and if you have your alerts set up for those appropriately, you're going to get people who may not necessarily be attracting the entire market. And because they're not attracting the entire market, chances are you're not going to be competing with that many people in trying to buy the property. So make sure that when you start to become an area expert, you work out all of the different agencies that are living in your area. You find all of their websites and you set up all of the appropriate alerts on all of those websites so that you start getting those proactively from the little agency portals, and you just cross-check that against the big portals when they're sending them through as well. So that's super important when it comes to doing that. Now, an extension of that, so that's way number 4. An extension of that is that some vendors are even more cost conscious than that, and they won't even want to sign up an agent. They will believe that they can actually sell the property themselves. So they may use some of the cheap online listings where they can actually become the agent themselves, or alternatively, they may put it on websites like Gumtree and things like that, and not have any formal web presence other than the marketplace. So I've seen properties on Gumtree, I've seen properties on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and a number of other things like that. So make sure you're always monitoring those areas to look for that. Now, I've seen 2 or 3 people in my community make massive profits out of deals that were sitting in those marketplaces, so like a Gumtree or a Facebook Marketplace, because the vendor was a little bit too scroogey to actually spend advertising. And the profits that were there were insane because the vendor wasn't that well educated on the value of the property. So that is number 5 is Gumtree and marketplace type situations. So number 6, we all are building a team of experts that are going to sit in and around us. So our consultants. So we've got town planners, we've got civil engineers, we've got architects, surveyors, all those sorts of people. Now, they are people who are on our team. What is really important is that you build relationships with them to say, look, if you can bring me an opportunity, I'm happy to pay you a finder's fee for the privilege of introducing me to a property. Give them the requirements that you're looking for that property. What is the, I guess, the zoning? What is the land size that you're looking for? What's your budget point? That sort of thing. Let those consultants start finding opportunities for you, because their normal clientele are almost guaranteed to be dealing with the kinds of properties that you're actually looking for. And every now and then they're going to find someone who isn't cashed up enough to take their project all the way through to completion, or is instead looking to turn over a property really quickly. And so you might opportunistically find opportunities come through those consultants. So make sure you go out of your way to build really strong relationships with your consultants and the like. So that's, what are we up to? That's number 6. So that's the 6th ways to actually farm our property patch. The number 7 is what is called a law list. Now, a law list is something where you can subscribe to these in each of your different jurisdictions. It is effectively all of the court cases that are coming up in the local area. So in the local magistrates court, they need to publicly advertise those cases that are coming up at least a day in advance of what is actually going to be happening. So there's going to be opportunities where you're going to see, for example, it might be Commonwealth Bank versus Jones or Westpac versus Smith, things like that. Now, chances are that's going to be an upcoming, well, it's a default that's sitting there, and it's the bank actually starting to initiate proceedings with that person. So if you start to see those alerts, you can then start to have a look at, well, what are the opportunities where I can work with that vendor, try and get the bank off their back. So this is not about taking advantage of people. I want to make this very, very clear, but instead saying, well, what is the issue that you've got? How far in arrears are you? How do we actually get you to the point where we can salvage your credit rating? We can avoid you going into bankruptcy, give you some money for the privilege, but by helping you to get out of this financial distress, we're going to be able to have the flexibility of time to be able to work with you and on the property to actually take that to, I guess, a successful outcome at the end. So you may do that even in a joint venture with the landowner with a small amount of money just to pay any backlog of unpaid mortgage payments and things like that, just to get the bank off their back. So watch out for things like that. They're very easy to subscribe to, very free to subscribe to. It does take a little bit of effort, and I want to be really, really clear here that I don't condone taking advantage of people in that financial distress, but instead working with them to try and get a mutually agreeable win-win scenario that actually comes out of that. So what are we up to? That's number 7. So friends and family. So friends and family is number 8. Friends and family are going to help you in showing you different opportunities that are going to come about, but only, and I say only when they know that you are doing property, okay? So do not be afraid of actually telling your friends and family that, hey, I am not only into property, but I'm actually into property development, and let them know the kinds of things they're actually looking for. Now, many times they might feel a little bit intimidated, but if you don't actually put it out there, then they will never actually have the opportunity to actually bring it to you. Now, those sorts of things are fantastic for, I guess, opportunistic things where, you know, John down the road is trying to sell a property and one of your friends meets them at a barbecue, and it just kind of happens through this organic process, or what is called serendipity. Okay, so by putting yourself out there, by letting people know that you are a property developer, by letting people know that you're looking for things, then those opportunities will start to present themselves. Now, many people call that luck, but I want to give you a very clear definition of what I believe luck is. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And so if you put yourself in a position where that opportunity is going to present itself, it's actually presenting itself all the time, but if you have not prepared, then you're not going to be ready to take advantage of that. So I would say when somebody comes to you at work and says, at the water cooler, for example, and says, hey, what did you get up to on the weekend? Don't go, oh, not much. Tell them about the meetup that you came to. Tell them about the Sunday session that you watched. Tell them that you, I guess, went to whatever education event that you were looking at. Tell them that you were looking for properties all weekend. Let them know that you are actually in property and that you are into property development. Because if you don't let them know, then there's no way that they can actually show an interest. And if they're not showing an interest, they're not going to tell you about those opportunities as and where they present. So make sure you're doing that. So that's friends and family and serendipity, okay? Next one is property developer network meetups, okay, and maybe other property meetups that might be existing around the place. So when you're hanging around a community of like-minded people, we run mastermind sessions at the end of all of our meetups. When you're doing that and you're telling people in and around your community, you're telling them the kinds of opportunities you're looking for, the zoning, the area, the deal size, the price points that you're looking for, etc. And people in that community, they're already going out and farming areas. They might find an opportunity that is a workable property, but doesn't fit their particular criteria. So they'd be more than happy to hand that off with regards to finding, a finder's fee or things like that along the process. So make sure that you are turning up to meetups, that you're hanging around with communities that are of like-minded, and that you're having those conversations all the time. Now, with that in mind, we also have our own Facebook community that you can actually do that too. Now we have our property developer network group. So we very clearly and succinctly don't allow trading of deals in there. So we've actually done a spin-off into a secondary website called Development Site Deal Hub, where people are trading off-market transactions all the time. So search for the Facebook group called Development Site Deal Hub, and I'll give you that link in a couple of moments. If you look for Development Site Deal Hub, that's where you're going to be finding off-market opportunities. So somebody who's already found a deal, somebody who is starting to farm that and might be looking to flick that on for a finder's fee. Equally, it's a place where if you find a deal, you can flick it into that group for a finder's fee as well, assuming that it is both developable and profitable. So you've got to make sure that those two criteria are fit. It's also a fantastic place where if you're looking for investment partners and that sort of thing, there is a lot of people in there who are looking to invest in other people's deals. So great place to find JV money partners and the like. So Development Site Deal Hub is that one. So just trying to think what we're up to now. So we've had letters, agents, door knocking, the online portals. We've had serendipity, consultants, Gumtree, law lists, Development Site Deal Hub, friends and family, and the PDN meetup. So that's our 11, folks. So there you go. Now there, for bonus points, there are a couple of other ones, and this is where you're starting to get a little bit more professional and a little bit more up market as you go, and you're doing a few more deals. You might brand your own website. Okay, so you might have, Rob's property development website, for example, and you might say on there the things that you're looking for, and put on there the nice clear criteria of the kinds of deals that you're looking for, and how you can actually work with people either as joint ventures or actually purchasing properties outright, that sort of thing. Tell them what you're actually looking for. They can actually just submit a form and say, hey, look at my property, I'm interested in selling. What would you be interested in doing? So that's a bonus. That's a number 12. But this is more when you're getting super professional. And then when you want to take that one step further, you may get to a point where you might actually do paid advertising. So paid advertising might be to Google AdWords or Facebook ads and that sort of thing as well, where you start to target people to actually say, I'm looking for this specific kind of deal. Now, so though that number 12 and number 13 is more when you're, I guess, a little bit more professional and you've got a little bit more momentum and the like, but they're certainly valid ways of actually doing that. So once again, I'm just going to put those lists up for everyone. So here you are. So you've got letters, you've got agents, you've got door knocking, you've got online portals, you've got your big portals and your small portals, you've got serendipity, you've got consultants, Gumtree, law lists, Development Site Deal Hub, friends and family, and your PDN community. And for those bonus points, I guess your own individual website and also some marketing and Facebook ads, Google ads, etc. So there you go. There's your 11 ways, folks. That's assuming that you've already got your area nailed down and ways that you can actually start to fill that property, the pipeline, the funnel to actually start to analyze deals. Now, a reminder, folks, that we do these Facebook Lives every single Sunday at 5 p.m. Brisbane time. Now, I note that's Brisbane time, given that we have entered into daylight savings and the majority of the country have changed time zones. So that may have changed to 6 o'clock or even 7 o'clock in some areas. So make sure that you, I guess, stay tuned for that particular element. Reminder also, these are the Facebook groups that we actually run. So there's the Property Developer Network group, and there's also the development site Deal Hub that I mentioned before for trading of those sites. Also, for those of you who aren't aware, we also do run a 12-month education and mentoring program. We're doing an intake for that right now. I'm not going to do a giant sales pitch, but what I would say, it's called Property Development Formula. And if you're interested in actually joining us, then the link to that is propdev.info/PDF. So propdev.info/PDF. So if that's of interest to you at all, go check it out, and it covers what we do in our program and how you can actually get to the point where you find the development strategy you want, find the area that you want, and then we will start to prove to you that we're in an area that's both developable and profitable. Then you can start farming it with the ways that we just went through today. So that's it, folks. I'm just going to go and see what we've got from questions from the community, see what's sitting in there. Give me 2 secs while I just fire up Facebook and see how many questions we've got racing through. So a couple of people just saying hi. So Luke, Noel, Peter, Frank, Michael, Peter again, Heikkinen, Tarek, Sean, and a whole bunch more. So I guess there's plenty of people on there. So hello to everybody. I'm just going to see what questions we've got here. So how long do you spend qualifying? So Anti's got a question. How long do you spend qualifying? So two-part answer here, Anti. So I have a rapid elimination method, which has a multi-stage process. So we've got a 10-minute check, a 2-hour check, and then a full due diligence check. So 3 stages in that. Now that works really well when it's combined with our suburb selection process, which determines if the strategy that we're working on is going to be profitable in the area. So when those 2 elements are combined together, then I can actually spend 10 minutes qualifying the site before sending a letter out. Now, that is based on the predetermining fact that we have qualified the suburb actually works for our strategy, which takes a lot of pre-work, okay? So you do all of that pre-work, and then when you get to that, there might be 1,000 opportunities in the area that meet your particular zone type and land size. You're going to put all 1,000 of those through that 10-minute check. And you might narrow that down to a list of, say, 500 properties that you're now super interested in. So 10-minute on 1,000, and then narrow that down to a super hot list, and then you're going to start farming that super hot list. That is a list that will work for you for years. So a lot of pre-work in getting there. By the time you actually go through that process and qualify the area and the like. But what I can say is if you do that work, this is the sniper approach that I was talking to before. If you do that work, it's a gift that keeps on giving, because you know that you're in an area that's not only developable, but profitable if you can buy it at or around market price. And so now it's just a numbers game. And so it's just farming and jamming more and more opportunities into that funnel. So hopefully that helps you, Antti. So Luke has got, Luke says, nice. Peter says, sexy letters. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Peter. Are you talking about putting lingerie on the outside? Or Peter says, yellow paper. So yellow paper inside the envelope is fantastic if they open the envelope, Peter. So yes, we want it to be different, but the hardest part is actually getting them to open the envelope. Once they've opened it, now they've actually got a curiosity to read what's inside anyway. So I think at that point, the yellow is certainly going to attract their attention, but if they haven't opened it, they'll never see the yellow paper. So I think it's a combination effect, mate. So Hayden says, how do I create an alert with the courts? How can I get this information? So you've got to, Hayden, you've got to go look at, so do a Google search for law lists. Find your local magistrate court, and it's just a matter of subscribing to that list. It's free service. that you can actually do in most jurisdictions, and you'll get alerts for that every single day about the upcoming events that are actually happening. So Carmen says, hi Rob, what are the websites have these lists of properties that are on default for free? So Carmen, there's a couple of services that you can subscribe to that monitor those law lists and monitor the defaults that are out there, but they charge you for that. So there's none that I'm aware of that do that for free, but there are plenty where you can get the alerts and check that out for yourself. So the law list, as I said, is one of those. You can subscribe to the public trustee, those sorts of things as well for those sorts of alerts. That's another one that I should have mentioned in our list, so folks. So that's number 14 on the list. But there's none that I'm aware of, Carmen, that is for free. Instead, it's a matter of you putting some effort into the process. Subscribe to those law lists and the magistrates courts, and you'll get those alerts. Ruth says it's freely available on courts.queensland.gov.au. Thank you, Ruth. I guess that's clearly the Queensland one, but there will be a New South Wales, there'll be a Victoria, there'll be a WA, South Australia, etc. So, but I'm sure that if you search for something similar in your particular jurisdiction, that you will find those. Peter says, family off the cards for me. Understand, Peter. So I'm not talking about family as investing for you, but family is a great place to let them know what it is that you actually do. And because they're all dealing with a wider network than you in particular, when they hear somebody looking to transact a property, they may say, hey, go talk to Peter, because that's the kind of thing that he's actually interested in. So they may do an introduction for you. So they don't necessarily need to take an active role per se, but rather if they know what you're doing and if they understand what you're looking for, then opportunistically, when those conversations arise, they may be able to do the introduction for you. Adam says, thanks, Rob. We're certainly getting a lot more inquiries and interest for the letters we've sent last year. Thank you, mate. So Adam is one of our former students and sounds like he's getting some good results with the way that he's changed his letter writing. So thank you, mate. Really appreciate that. And I guess there's no one way that works with regards to letters, but instead it's a test and measure approach. So if you send 100 letters out, you check your results. My guidance is just change one thing that when you change the letter next time and check to see whether or not you get a slightly different result. And if you don't get a better result, then go back to the first version and change a different thing. If you do get a better result, now do one more change, just one. If you do too many changes at once, it's really hard to tell which change got the better result. But if you do one test and one change at a time, you will slowly get a better and better letter every single time you go through. Now I can see that Shelley's put the link to Development Site Deal Hub, so thank you, Shelley, I appreciate that. Fabiana says, great info as usual. Thank you, I appreciate that. John says, thanks, Rob, great content as always. More than welcome. A lot of other people saying thank you. Haikanen also saying thank you, excellent content. Fabiana says, in Victoria, we don't get access to owners' names. How would you address the envelope letter to the owner? Is this still work? Will it still work? So the answer to that, Fabiana, you're talking about the fact that in things like RP Data and Price Finder, they don't give away the information. So there's a couple of different ways you can get the owner's details. So, but it does take a little bit of work to actually do that. So for example, you could do a title search on the property. That's going to cost a little bit of money. You could also have a look at the electoral roll, which is a public record. You could do a rate search, which may or may not be free depending upon your particular council. So there's lots of different ways that you can actually get the info, but you have to take some extra steps in Victoria because of privacy laws in order to find that. However, there is enough public information out there that with a little bit of brute force, you will be able to actually get the details that you're actually after. Dean says, lots of gold and focus-based info as always. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Jane says, thanks for the info, more than welcome. Heikkinen says the same. So Adam says, reason to throw away rather than to keep, right? One of the best things I learned from PDN. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that, mate. So that 10-minute check that we were talking about, the rapid elimination method, is really based on thinking very oppositely to the way most educators out there that teach. We're not looking for a reason to keep. Instead, we're looking for a reason to throw it away. And in 10 minutes, we can find plenty of reasons to throw a site away. So we're only going to justify putting extra effort into sites that actually justify it. Rather than many people who spend days or even weeks analysing a site only to find out later on that there was some issue or challenge on the property that turns it into a dud. So we just shortcut that process and we kind of throw away the duds up front. And if we have thrown away the duds, then anything that's left over by default means that it is actually a developable site. So thank you, Adam. Appreciate that, mate. So John says, property with multiple sellers, i.e. divorce or family selling after death, how much time do you spend if they don't agree on price or time before dropping a possible deal? That's a very good question, John. There's no one answer to that. What I would say is that wherever there are multiple people involved in the sale of a property, it is highly likely that getting consensus on that is going to be challenging. Because of that, it actually causes a lot of people to run away. And so they will try to engage, they will try to negotiate, and if they aren't successful, then they go too hard and run away. If you are patient and if you are able to hang around long enough and show that you genuinely have an interest in the property, you may do a Stephen Bradbury and pick it up after everyone else is gone. Now, there have been many, many times where I've been the last man standing because everyone else has run away. So don't throw a site away, just moderate the amount of time and effort that you put into that, okay? So don't go chasing it, but put it on a follow-up register, and in a week or a month, depending upon what the issue or challenge is, make sure you check in with that agent or make sure you check in with those vendors and just go, hey, I'm still here. What's the progress on that? Where that is of particular interest is I have one site that I've been negotiating on for 4.5 years, okay? It has gone through 5 different agents in that time. The vendor's expectations were ridiculously high right at the start. And in that timeline, they've dropped from $1.5 million for the property down to 770. And interestingly, my original offer way back was 750. And so we've gotten to the point where it's super close. But again, last man standing. And every time a new agent comes in, we let them know about the history and we let them know that we've been there for a long time and we let them know that we've put offers in and that the vendor has been unrealistic all this time. And slowly but surely it has whittled its way back. Now, I have not burnt a lot of energy in that timeline, but what I have done is been persistent and consistent in keeping up the relationships and making sure that we are proactively reaching out from time to time, just going, hey, we're still here. Has it sold yet? Over time, the vendor will slowly start to see some reality, and then there's a chance to negotiate. And at that point, chances are everyone else has run away because it's been too difficult. So Mary says, can you set up alerts for new listings from local agents? Absolutely, you can, Mary. So each of those local portals, so the little real estate shop just around the corner from you, most of those, from a back-end point of view, they pay for a service from a website creation company that specializes in real estate listings. And so they pretty much all have alerts that you can actually subscribe to. So I would go to, if there's 20 different real estate agent companies in your area, I would go and subscribe to all 20 of those little local listings. And that will help massively. Luke says exporting from Pricefinder has changed from when it was. So that's a question for our property development formula program, Luke. I'm not going to answer that in here, mate, but I'm more than happy if you want to reach out to our mentoring thing, where I'll actually touch on that there, mate. So rather than, I guess, give answers out into the public. Auntie says, Rob, would owners be upset that you have done a title search and see this as an infringement of privacy? Auntie, it's public record that actually exists. So whilst they may potentially be upset, there is nothing that you've done legally wrong. And so, but equally, they may not be upset. So my question to you is, do you want to judge the 1 or 2 people that might get upset versus the several hundred who may not? And do you want to talk yourself out of trying that opportunity, and for the occasional disgruntled phone call from time to time, in which case you can easily defend yourself and say, well, it is publicly available information. Because it's public available, I'm allowed to do that. So, you know, I would not get disheartened by that. Instead, I would just know that it may happen from time to time and accept that that is part of the process. Sean says, great session as always. Have a great night. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Luke says, also on Price Finder, I can export agent-related sales. Should I avoid these? It's a new option on export. Again, mate, that's a property development formula question, so I will answer that inside the mentoring side of things, mate, if you wouldn't mind pushing that in there. Auntie says, have you checked out Archistar? Thoughts? Yes, I have, Auntie, and there are a lot of really fantastic portals out there. The thing is that you're going to need lots of them, okay? So there's sales portals, there's development research portals, there's all sorts of things like that. So it is not a way to source properties, but rather it's a way to qualify properties. So I guess make sure that you're using the right tool for the right job. From a product perspective, it's a fantastic product. I guess it's really where are you at in the cycle as to whether or not you're ready for that right now, because it is a little bit of an expensive product. We are in negotiations with them at the moment to try and get a better price point because of the size of our network. So watch this space. We may be able to do that pretty soon. So yeah, I'm going to say watch that space, Auntie. So John says, thanks, Rob. Patience without stopping searching for other deals. Okay, got it. I'm not quite sure I know the context of that, John, but I think you're responding to one of my responses before. So no problem at all. And Peter says, thank you, Rob. Not sure if you dropped out on your end. I don't think I have, mate. I'm pretty sure I'm here. So maybe you've dropped out at your end. But that said, that appears to be the last comment or question on here. So I'm going to say thank you all, folks. Great session as always. And I look forward to seeing you on our next Sunday session. Bye for now.